This is the Education Business Podcast for consultants and business owners providing services in schools. I'm Claire Riley, and I'll be sharing how to start, grow and scale your education business. Hi everyone, so Ed and I have a guest with us today. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, great to be here, thanks.
So we're going to find out all about you and how you can help education businesses. So just going to dive straight in. You are the founder of EdTech Impact. You also have Innovate My School, and you've obviously learned a lot on that journey to get to where you are today. So how did that journey come about?
Good question. It's been a convoluted pathway to running EdTech Impact, I'd say. Going right back, I became an IT technician in a large all-boys secondary school in Liverpool, where my dad was also the head. So a bit of nepotism, I suppose. And then we got myself involved in all sorts of IT projects. I came straight out of uni on the back of information systems degree, and I was combined with crawling around on the floor, connecting cables and plugging in power sockets, to then starting up virtual learning environments. VLEs were really booming. This was 2006, 2007. Moodle was a really popular open source platform that we decided to go with, and I became Moodle Mike. Actually, was the name I was coined by all the staff. And we created this sort of all singing, all dancing platform that really brought the community together. And at the time, that's something they'd never done before, using a digital platform to share resources and mark homework and things. And I suppose I then became involved in various IT projects across the school, across the feeder primaries, working with the local authority in Liverpool. And I learned a lot about digital transformation in schools. Cardinal Heenan actually went through a Building Schools for the Future programme, it was called, BSF. If you remember, it was a big drive to improve the buildings Cardinal Heenan was where I was at, and it was pretty... in fact, it used to be an orphanage converted into a school, so it definitely needed a new building, and so it was picked for, I think, Wave 2. So going through that process was a real eye-opener for me at my sort of young age, and all the decision-making that goes with it. I suppose I became the guy innovating the school, bringing back new ideas, attending BET, driving digital transformation in various departments and things. And I then started my own business as a side hustle, which became Innovate My School, which was essentially scaling up what I was doing to an extent and finding more instances, more stories across the country, eventually internationally, of teachers and IT managers who are innovating in their schools, particularly with technology, but it was everything really. That started in 2010. I then did the classics, went part-time, working at home, out the bedroom, me and the dog, eating beans on toast and coffees every day for about 6 months. And then made enough money just to quit Cardinal Heenan and go full-time. We started events as well on the back of the community we'd built, and this became a really good revenue stream. We pioneered the concept of speed dating in education with head teachers, and that was part of the fun of it, getting all these head teachers to go speed dating, and there's lots of jokes and things, but it was actually a really effective format to bring decision makers together around and then introduce them to education products based on the pain points, and we'd match make. My dad was part of a cluster group in Liverpool called the Liverpool Association of Head Teachers, also known as LASH, and they definitely went on the lash.
Well, they are in Liverpool, so
it was my dad's favourite part. What I discovered is these groups existed everywhere, primary, secondary groups in every local authority, every region in the country, and we tapped into that network and built this database of cluster groups and started running speed dates for them up and down the country. And that really helped us grow our revenue. And we could then reinvest that into more content, more community. And that became the flywheel, really, of how we built our audience and reputation. And on the back of that, I started to get involved in all sorts of things, like joining the British Educational Suppliers Association, BESA. I was fortunate enough to get voted into the exec council by members, and that's because I pretty much worked with every single one of them, so they all knew me. And you get involved in that sort of thing, and then you're involved suddenly with the DFE and interesting projects that are happening there. And at the time, this was about 2017, the DFE decided it was interested in EdTech once again. There hadn't really been anything for ages since they got rid of Bector, which was like the government sort of driven Quango. And we had the bonfire of the Quango, so Bector went when all that happened, and there was just this big gap. And then the DFE decided, I think it was like 3 of them in a dusty corner of the DFE offices, like, we're the EdTech team. And so they brought together a load of people, myself included, to draw upon where they felt the pain points were and where should they put their focus. And they took a real researcher sort of mindset to the meeting, and were just furiously writing as many notes as they could. And what was sort of bubbling out of those conversations was evidence. There's this real lack of transparency in who exists as an EdTech product, and are they any good, basically, to put it bluntly. And there was just this real lack of transparency around what they're actually doing and the outcomes and the impacts they're having in different schools. And a lot of people were sort of looking at me thinking, Mike, you should start this, you should take this on. You've got the database and the network on both sides. And it kind of, struck a chord. And so I then pursued the path of investment. And I was lucky that I'd built a relationship up with the MD of YPO, Yorkshire Purchasing, one of the exec council members of BESA. If there's one bit of advice, it's just get yourself out there in these networks. You don't know who you're going to meet. And fortunately, I built up a good relationship with Simon from YPO, and he, I guess he thought a bit of me, and he ended up investing, which was quite out the ordinary for YPO, given they're owned by 13 local authorities. That was a story in itself, really. But and so they put in 450,000 into this marketplace vision that I'd created around evidence, and I believed, I'd been in the sector a while. I'd seen so many marketplace ideas and directories come and go. There's a graveyard of them, and it's because they don't have anything that's actually of value to the buyers, to the schools, the teachers, the parents, the decision makers looking for solutions. And I felt the missing piece was evidence. And so that was the heart of EdTech Impact's model and vision, to build the evidence base for schools and work with both sides. And sort of fast forward to today. I mean, I've fast forwarded a lot there, like COVID and everything, and there's lots of learnings, but here we are now. And, coming into the next year, 2023, and we have 400,000 unique users, 1,900 EdTech products, a footprint outside the UK, 30% are from the US now. And we're, we're a sustainable business, we're revenue generating, and the team's grown. So it has been, an arduous journey, but it's really just sort of learning from those lessons and sort of reinvesting into models that work.
Yeah, and really, I think assessing what does work along the way, that's the hard thing. I think sometimes when we're mentoring, you can relay all the learnings that you have, but you also have to experience it for yourself in some way. You can go into it and you can have some learnings, but you also have to make your own mistakes and take those learnings forward, don't you? Otherwise, you can't learn in the same way, I don't think.
I'm first to hold my hand up. I've made every mistake in the book, I feel like.
Yeah, us too.
But and it is how you learn. And I mean, I hope I'm in a position now where I can see a few things coming and try to take a slightly different approach to avoid that mistake. But it still happens. And, we were creating a new category. No one's ever built an EdTech marketplace that has worked in the sector. So we were breaking new ground here. There was no one to look at. we looked at the playbooks of many other marketplaces outside of education, but education is pretty unique as well. And so, yeah, we were always going to make a few mistakes. We're 4.5 years in with EdTech Impact. I feel like we're only just getting started because it's taken us a while to figure out the model, the flywheel of how we acquire new users from the school side, what the revenue model is on the seller side. But yeah, I just think you've got to get out there. And, I'm a natural introvert, I'd say. And suddenly you've got to be the salesperson. But actually, you probably are the best salesperson because you believe in it so much. You've got the kind of owner's eyes. You've got that passion and energy when you're talking to someone about it. And that was one of the biggest learnings, I'd say, is, I continually brought in new salespeople and handed it all over to them. And every time I sort of jumped back in, we got, the results went up. And I think I was always really quick to try and hand it over. And so we take a slightly different approach now. And I think, particularly if you're quite early stage, I think you've got to be the one who's out there pounding the pavement and just listening. Because the thing is, if you're doing the sales pitch, that's your customer. They're telling you the answers, basically, of what you need to build. And so, yeah, I love joining the calls now. But that was the biggest, sort of thing I've got to adapt to over the years.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And for me, the same thing with product. Like, I am back in on product now, where I felt like I handed it over because I had so much other things to do, but it's a different kind of product when I'm in product.
Yeah. Is that one of your passions? Is that something you really enjoy as well?
Yeah. I mean, it's a foundation of why I set the business up, really, I think. I always think I like to be creative, and obviously that's a creative outlet. And even when I was about 14, we got taught PowerPoint, and it was before now you can make it fly in and fly out, but back in the day you couldn't. And I'd make these pictures and I'd come up with inventive ways to make things disappear. I mean, I don't know why. I used to make like a show or something, and then I'd want my mum to watch it, and she'd watch it for 5 seconds and be like, listen, it's going on for like 45 minutes, it's boring. But in my head, it was great, and it was just that creating an experience for somebody else, or a pathway for somebody else, or a product for somebody else, basically. So yeah, my thing.
Yeah, I think you've got to be in there for the outcomes, to it sounds from what you're saying, delighting the customer with a brilliant product. And it's the same reason I've done any of my, Innovate My School, EdTech Impact. Like, it's probably why I enjoy the sales calls, because you get to see them really excited about something you built. And, the impact we're actually having in their businesses by helping them generate more leads or visibility, or learn about their product through customer reviews, or it's the school saying this should have existed, this is exactly what we needed. You just get so happy when you hear that. And it can't just be about the money. Like, if it's money first, I've seen a few businesses who've gone in revenue first, and they just don't last that long.
Especially in education, like you have to have something to believe in. It's so interesting because we interviewed the MD of RM, she's called Monique, a couple of months ago, and she basically said that she came from the retail sector, where at Christmas you can kind of have a bad set of pajamas and you can just sell it because it's Christmas. But in education, you can't do that. It has to be good, because you'll get found out, basically.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And I think that starts to tie in, doesn't it, to what you're talking about with outcomes and impact. And the point of EdTech Impact is demonstrating that value of people's products out there to the buyer, effectively.
Yeah, I mean, having spent so many years working with the vendors, some of them have absolutely brilliant products, but they're just struggling of how to get that visibility or get that feedback and generate leads. And they look at what's out there, the options, spend tens of thousands to go to a trade show and, hopefully get the footfall. And if they get the footfall, they're fighting off everybody else. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those exhibitions as a route to market. They can be valuable, but if you're a small business, it's really hard to spend money. And when you have to get a return on that investment, otherwise you're not going to be able to pay the bills. I made that mistake. I remember putting my house savings into an exhibition because they phoned me up and they said, "Oh, you've been requested by the delegates," and I just fell line and sinker for it. It's like, oh, really? Should have just pushed back. So I put all my money in. And,
It is really expensive as well. I mean, we've never done it in the UK. We've recently done it abroad. But it's so, especially, it depends how much your product is as well. But it can be really difficult to see that return, because it's not just about the day. You've got to have this massive plan afterwards, and you've got to have people to follow through on that if you don't necessarily have the time for that yourself.
Difficult. We were doing like military training in the office before, on making sure, spot the tire kicker, spot the one, I want you out in the aisles pulling them in, and because it meant a lot to us. And you've really got to work it, like you say, the pre, the during, the after, the social. There's so much to really make the most of that, and so it's not something to do lightly. And I think there's so many other things you could be doing that possibly. It depends where you're at, though. If you've got a high price point, then an exhibition, you can afford that acquisition cost. And like you say, if you're going international, you're trying to learn about the marketplace in that. So you want to talk to as many people as you can. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Also, to break into the international marketplace, obviously help you do that. And you can get funding with the DIT. Well, we did. Whether that's still in place now, but obviously that helps. It helps incentivize it. Just a quick question, which is a bit off piece really, but did you ever fancy? So you're working in schools. Your dad's a head teacher. Did you think, oh, I fancy being a teacher, or did you just think, no, mine is the tech support? Because it's so funny talking to you. Like, I'm looking at you both. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at Ed, and I'm like, gosh, you've kind of got a lot in common.
If anything, it pushed me the other way. It was. I think there was some tough kids in that school, based on where it was in Liverpool.
Where was it? Because I did my teacher training in Liverpool.
Oh, right, Cardinal Heenan in West Derby.
Oh, I didn't. I don't know where that is. I was at Halewood. That was my really tough school.
Yeah, it drew on different areas, but some of them were a bit more deprived. And there was one area, Cantrell Farm, Canny Farm, and it was. I used to drive through it, and you'd lock the doors and things, and there'd be kids flying past on quad bikes and balaclavas with the siren and a police car going after them with the siren. I'd never seen a police quad bike before, and I didn't know but that's so they could follow them down the dirt tracks and stuff. So and I saw a few teachers come in because I play five-a-side with them on a Friday, and they'd be in bits by the end of the week because they'd just been torn to shreds. And just for a quiet lad like me, that didn't really appeal. Although I look back now and I see the life of the international teacher who working in Dubai, and my best mate spent 6 years in Dubai and paid off all his debts and built this great reputation. And so I could see the traction of that path. I think I'm past that one now, but I totally get it, and I think they're some of the most committed people, most generous as well with their time, in terms of sharing and helping their fellow colleagues and people they don't know on Twitter. Just like, here's my entire lesson plan portfolio. It's amazing. And we tried to tap into some of that with Innovate My School, really getting them to share their stories and their tips and ideas, and we had some very interesting ones.
Okay. So why do you think then education businesses should consider the impact they're making?
Well, if you're not thinking about impact, then you shouldn't be here, I would say, because really that is the outcome of why you exist. I think it should be at the heart of it. That is, if your customer is an educator, then that is ROI for them. It's to improve attainment, to reduce workloads, improve student collaboration, improve efficiencies across the school, improve teacher knowledge. Whatever your outcome or outcomes are, they sit at the heart of the business of why you exist. And so I think you should be thinking about it at all times. and you should be trying to collect as much feedback as you can and evidence around to measure that improvement and that efficacy of your impact within your product. It's not an easy thing to do, but there are ways, and if you aren't doing that, then start now. Obviously this is a space that I've sat at a lot of roundtables and had a lot of discussions about how to measure impact and how to build evidence. And I think for so long it's been left to bigger businesses who can afford to pay for large efficacy studies, large randomized control trials costing £1 million, and then it takes 2 years, and then at the end of it, the product's totally changed and it was all a bit of a waste. Or, it proved impact in a very specific context. But what about the other 99% of users you have? What about the evidence for those guys? So I think it's a combination of different things. It's collecting data within your platform and looking at that, engagement and use, and then just creating that ongoing feedback loop from your customers, which is what EdTech Impact sets out to do. It helps you essentially collect feedback from your customers on the impact metrics that you care about on an ongoing basis, and then replying to them and sort of building that dialogue and giving your customers that voice. You could work with academics, you could work with researchers to do more coordinated studies. I think the first step is probably to, without getting too scientific about it, but creating a logic model, like what are your actual outcomes? It's an interesting one, because when we set up EdTech Impact, we partnered with UCL, University College London. I don't know if you remember the Educate program. It was like a couple of years ago. It had a lot of funding. Yeah, and they had a whole team there who would help you create that logic model. And we created our own taxonomy of outcomes: student outcomes, teacher outcomes, whole school outcomes, parent outcomes, which we now use. So when a product comes along, we ask them to choose the outcomes they care about. They then sit at the heart of this feedback loop. And so we start to collect qualitative and quantitative data on those outcomes. And that's the process, essentially. And it's about doing it as frequently as we can. But it's interesting because you get the odd business who selects every single outcome. I mean, there's 13 plus. We're like, really? You're good at everything? Like, okay, well, let's see. And then it comes back, and they're stronger in some areas than others. So it's a learning process as well. It's not. And I think if you don't have that in place at the heart of the business, attached to customer success, marketing, sales, product, it really should be baked in operationally. And then you've really united the teams around the thing that matters most.
So if you, go on, you go.
I was going to say, so as a buyer, then, so there's different ways you can kind of prove the impact, I suppose. So it could be via reviews from other customers who've used that product, and kind of real evidence of them using it in their school environment, for example. Or you could, like you say, you could pay a lot of money for a full-scale research program and things. But as a buyer, what do you think would be, as a decision maker in a school or a teacher buying a product, what do you think is more important? Somebody who's really used it, giving their opinion on it, or some kind of big research program?
I feel like you know the answer, but I will say it is, show me what is working well in a school like mine with the same characteristics as me, the same context. I mean, for years, teachers have always bought from other teachers. I mean, take my dad, for example, always wanted what was in the school down the road, or what was being used, what was popular in his network of heads. And I still think that applies. But I'd like to think it's a little bit more than just, such and such a head said it's great. So I mean, with EdTech Impact, the whole purpose of the reviews is to collect teacher feedback in different contexts around the things that matter. So, how frequently are they using it? How long have they been using it for? What's the profile of the user? How many users, how many students used it? And what's the profile of the school? What's the context? I think if you can share those conditions, that evidence, then I think well, I know it builds a lot of trust and confidence and can drive conversions. Interesting one, BISA do an EdTech research piece every year with teachers on their buying habits, and I've been tracking this, and so I can actually give you a stat. So in 2017, reviews was 21%, but now it's 73% as a of what do you use to inform your decision making. This is obviously with EdTech, but I suspect it sort of ripples across all the other categories as well. So I do think it is reviews, but that is the first step. That gives you confidence. Oh, this is something we perhaps should be interested in, but and then the other research follows on top. I think there's a problem with some of the bigger research pieces where you get this big academic report at the end. I mean, first of all, have the teachers got time to read that? Do they understand the language? Do they understand what it means? And that has often been the problem. I'm not being dismissive about it and say it shouldn't be there. It should, but I do think there's a translation that needs to happen there. And I also think we use reviews in how we buy, through other e-commerce sites in our everyday lives. That data exists. If I'm buying, I don't know, a curry on Friday night, I can find out feedback from lots of customers. Or if I'm buying the next iPhone, but in education, that doesn't exist. So that's the gap we're trying to fill.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a changing picture with some of the larger multi-academy trusts now? Because I know that there's a lot of focus on data, and they often now have non-teaching roles in those environments that might be specifically looking at data and things like that.
Definitely, particularly in the larger trusts. So we're working with a number of trusts and international school groups, working with one international group, 61 schools, and they have the fortunate capacity to be able to, like you say, non-teaching roles. They've got a CTO or an IT or the chief digital officer who has got the time to build a digital leader program, and these are the people who then are taking a more research approach, starting to audit their EdTech ecosystem as the first stage. What have we actually got? Stage 2, is it any good? Let's start collecting evidence. Let's build in a framework where we can test and evaluate and make decisions at the end. Do we keep it? Do we retire it? Do we roll it out across the other schools? That's absolutely what we're seeing. As every school is going through a form of digital transformation at the moment, just they're all at different stages. What we're seeing is the bigger trusts in particular are starting to build their own internal frameworks to manage that process more effectively.
Just because you've mentioned it again, what do you think that digital transformation in schools looks like over the next 10 years?
Okay. I suppose it will still be going on in 10 years. I don't think there's an end point. Like I say, everybody is going through a transformation and has a strategy of sorts. It's just some are very early stage. I would like to think everybody knows what they have, and I know that sounds really basic, but the more schools and groups we work with, the more we realise that they don't actually know what's being used in their schools. I mean, taking the international group, for instance, pretty high profile one, they had 700 products when we audited, 50 maths apps. I mean, there's a lot of overlap there. There's possibly a bit of wasted money. So I think that is step one. So schools are tight on money. Let's get rid of some of the subscriptions we don't need. Let's invest in the ones we do. I think there has to be a CPD element baked into this. We can't have this endless recycle of products that happens all the time. Because a teacher left or it didn't get the implementation correctly or the support it needed top down or the right training for all the staff. But I would hope everybody's kind of learned from those lessons. There's more knowledge sharing around how to do that better. I think the EdTech vendors are having to work harder than ever before to retain customers and put that customer success piece into it. I think they hopefully have a handle on more data. I definitely don't think all schools will be evaluating their products as effectively as we like. It's just a capacity problem. That is the thing. Unless suddenly they had loads of money, and it's probably unlikely to change. So, but I do think they'll have a better idea of what of a strategy and be working towards that goal or whatever their North Star metric is.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you brought up, and I'm sure, well, Ed can definitely talk to this, but it's more that centralisation and understanding of what a school has. For example, I suppose, particularly with maths, you want to make sure that everything's compatible, and you even come up against that now, don't you, Ed? It's like, no, you can't have that software if it didn't go with so and so, so and so, so and so, and I want to know, you can't just go off and buy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nowadays there's so much choice. There's so many different products on the marketplace, and it's how you coherently and easily make those talk to each other, so that actually all your assessment data lands in the right place, in a place where you can do something effective with it easily, rather than having to go into 10 different systems to see that information. So how can it's kind of hooking everything together, and that's important in a business environment as much as a school environment.
I would like to think we've solved that problem in 10 years' time with the plumbing, if you like, of the infrastructure of all the products and getting them to talk to one another. I mean, interoperability is coming up a lot, and there are solutions out there that can help with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's hopefully one that's resolved, and a lot of money and time is saved on the back of it.
Yeah, and obviously we were at an event a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about this, and I suppose it's got a lot of benefits, but then also it could have restrictions in terms of innovation. But I guess we'll just have to see how it goes, and I suppose that's where the bigger companies will lead.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to stifle innovation, and there's got to be room for startups to come in. But it's a very challenging environment right now, and we're seeing quite a lot of consolidation. It's really exploded, I would say, in the EdTech sector now. And maybe that is a good thing in some ways. Although the event we were at, they were criticizing very heavily how most consolidations don't work out for anybody, that no one's the real winner, which was interesting. But if they get that bit right, surely they will, then I think that will improve the conditions for schools and the EdTech sellers.
Yeah. Just before we finish up then, so obviously it's EdTech Impact, and we're on there. Would I say that we're definitely EdTech? I'm not sure. So my question to you is, if somebody's listening, what's the checklist, I suppose, to say, yes, I should be on there, and the team can help me get the data that I need to get, or some of the data that I need to get. What's who would benefit from it, basically?
I think EdTech is a very broad term that gets applied to everything. I mean, it's basically, have you got a digital solution in any form? Have you got digital resources? Yeah, then we can definitely help with EdTech Impact. We have a lot of different categories and lots of different filters, so that we can get very granular, or so the teacher looking for the solutions can get very granular. So if those apply to you, if you've got a digital resource, then we'd love to have you, and there's no cost to join EdTech Impact. We are trying to build and consolidate and bring everything in under one roof for schools, based in the UK and globally as well. If you don't have a digital solution, then right now we don't have an answer for you, but you could also look at Innovate My School and share some articles and share your story that way. So yeah, I mean, go to edtechimpact.com and you can read a lot more information about it, or contact me directly, or find me on LinkedIn. Love to chat.
Thank you. I just I think it's so interesting because everyone's got a different idea of what EdTech is, and I'm like, oh, are we EdTech? I don't know. It's just one of those things where you just want to clarify what constitutes that. And I think, there are quite a lot of people who are making their own resources that you can download digitally that really could benefit from being on the platform and starting to engage with that. They might be on already, but maybe they're not. And that'll be more companies that you find out about as well.
Yeah, just the whole process of collecting reviews I do think it's really important, and then sharing them widely on your socials, on your website. We've got widgets to embed on your page. All of this builds further trust and social proof, which drives conversions. Ultimately, it's not you saying we're great; it's our independent partner and our customers, verified. Yeah. So that's the difference. That's how it can help, really, not just visibility on the platform, but really leveraging all of that feedback and that data at every customer touch point possible, because it is about trust. Just to add a stat on the trust thing, so we did a survey. So I also co-founded the EdTech Evidence Group with 8 other UK EdTech businesses a few years ago, and really it's a community to bring together peers. So it's really hard going on it's a journey building your evidence. No one is nailing it, I would say. So we've created this peer-to-peer community where we can learn from each other. And we did a survey at the start using Teacher Tap, you may have heard of. I think there was about 8,000 teachers using it at the time. And only 8% said that they trusted the claims made by EdTech vendors, which I thought it'd be higher. I knew it'd be low, but yeah, that's a crisis of trust, I'd say. So you've got to work really hard to try and build that trust in this saturated marketplace, as you say. So, yeah, hopefully, your customers are the best way to do that.
Yeah. I'm just conscious of time now. I want to say thank you so much for being so generous with it.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. Yeah, it's been great. Good chat.
Yeah, it's been lovely to chat to you. I feel like I've heard a lot about you through Lee, but we've not really had a chance to chat one-on-one. So, although this is 2-on-1, but anyway, thank you for that. It's really helpful.
Thank you.
Brilliant, and hopefully we meet up at some point as well.
Yeah, we were just at an event, but didn't manage to say hello to each other. I was just explaining before. I was like, right, definitely need to see Michael, but I just want to check exactly what it looks like. And then there was no internet either. And I was like, I will try and see all the badges. And then I just got talking to people and I kept looking over. I might have even looked at you and I might have thought, is that you? But anyway, here we are online.
I probably have my contacts in, so no glasses.
Yes. I was like, no, he wears glasses.
Yeah. No, I had a guy who got really annoyed because I didn't meet him. And I was like, I was standing exactly where I told you. And it's like, he was looking at me and everything, but yeah, maybe I should just...
I wasn't annoyed. I was just like, I really should say hello.
Yeah. It was tricky. There was loads. Like the second time I've got out of Chester, I think in 2 years. So it's hard, trying to meet everybody. But
yeah. I mean, there were a lot of people there. I'm going through the LinkedIn list. I don't know about you. The list on LinkedIn.
Shout. I haven't done that yet. But yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, so later today they're just going to get loads of requests from me and you, aren't they?
Yeah, another cold email. But hey, you got to be in it to win it.
This is it. That you've just said you've got a network.
Yeah.
Well, super. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thanks both.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. To get more information to grow your business, sign up at educationbusinessclub.co.uk.